Welcome to the Poisoner's Almanac. I am your co-host, Adam.
I'm Rebecca.
How are you, my dear?
I am. I don't know. I think I'm just going to be tired forever. Why don't humans hibernate? I want to hibernate. Can I hibernate? I'm tired. I just want to go to sleep for like a couple of years at least.
I think I'm going to be permanently hopeless. Is that okay with you?
I go to see my endocrinologist today, and I took a look at my
endocrinologist. I hardly know her.
Oh my god! I took a look at my labs today. My thyroid peroxidase is pretty high, so that's probably why I'm tired all the time.
Yeah, the thing is, nobody knows what that is. Could you explain what that is?
It's a marker for Hashimoto's, which can also cause hypothyroidism, which I'm on thyroid meds, so I'm already
it was the
aware of the hypothyroid part. So.
Right. It was the cortisol levels that got the primary doctor to refer.
And I mean, yeah, but my thyroid levels were off as well. But I think my cortisol is fine. I think it's my birth control causing the numbers to go up on the cortisol.
Does it really?
Because the estrogen plays a factor.
Becca.
With some of that.
What benefit is there to being a woman?
Well, pissing men off. We love that. I mean, I enjoy it.
I'm just kidding. I love you and I think you're incredible. But honestly, why? I'm just kidding. Okay.
Anyway.
So
we're smarter. Duh.
Well, can't argue. I yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from New Hampshire. No, I need to mention the first bonus episode that you put out for the paid patron members on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support, of course. I listened to it and I just so enjoyed hearing you on that episode. I mean, I'd like to think I bring something to the table, but man, when you go solo, there was just something about your voice. It's like that line from Pride and Prejudice where she goes, "There's something pleasant about his mouth when he speaks." Like that's the way it felt when I was listening to that episode. And I was just like, and I told you this. I said, you talk on that episode like you really matter. Like you're worth listening to. And I enjoyed that very much. And for those of you who don't know, Becca is neurodivergent. She's ADHD, autistic, ADHD, all that stuff. So, we've talked a lot about this, like inherent, like I come built in with confidence. I have an inexhaustible well of confidence as a neurotypical extrovert. Like
must be nice.
I can just move through a room and mingle my way to a seat in Congress. It's no problem. But you are the polar opposite. Polar opposites attract. Most healthy relationships are a combination of the golden retriever and a black cat. Like that's how.
I had recharged a little bit by playing Stardew because the 1.6 update is out,
Whoa.
and so I played it for like probably way longer than I should have.
Wow.
And it wasn't morning.
Oh, great point.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
In the mornings, I'm just really tired.
But I just
perpetually tired. I'm just a perpetually tired pigeon. Not a night owl. I am not a morning whatever. What do they say about the morning? Morning gosling? I don't know.
What?
I just made that up. I don't know. What do they say about morning people?
Early bird gets the worm.
Early bird? I'm not an early bird.
No.
I don't get worms.
By the way, why are you eating worms? You're a person. Stop
Probably
that.
not the best. I mean, some people eat worms.
That's fair.
Timon and Pumbaa eat grubs.
Correct. The appropriate biological reference. And so I just wanted to mention that you sounded so just, I don't know. Forgive me, listener. She sounded so sexy on that episode.
Oh my God.
She really did. Like, I want to listen to it again.
And now we've turned into an OnlyFans. Great.
I mean, that's okay. Links in the show notes.
Oh my God. No.
I'm just kidding. Okay. So,
I mean, kudos to those who can do it, but
listen, the cost of living is high.
Yeah, I'm serious. I have no problem with it. I just couldn't do it.
Oh God.
The confidence thing,
Yeah, but it's in there.
Oh God.
You've showed us. You've tipped your hand. Anyways, so yes, I'm so excited for that first bonus episode. That's for the paid Patreon supporters. Let's do a little housekeeping for the old podcast here. Make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening on. Follow us on socials. There are links in the show notes specifically. the podcast Instagram, poisoners_almanac, which, by the way, I'll have you know, we cracked 1,000 followers on the podcast Instagram.
Yay.
Hold for applause.
We did it. Oh.
Hang on. They're still clapping. I can sense this.
Okay.
Hang on.
They're probably driving.
That's okay. They're clapping.
Don't clap if you're driving.
They're clapping on,
Please don't clap if you're driving. They're
smacking their hand on their right thigh as they do 80 down the highway. Okay, now it's over. I can sense this. Trust me.
Okay.
Thank you in advance for leaving. Thank you in advance for leaving 5-star reviews on specifically Spotify, but also on any other platform you're listening on. You guys are blowing it. I see the ones on Spotify the most often. You guys have left a ton of those, and that is extremely helpful to the podcast because it pushes any podcast further into the algorithm to seek out hungry listeners like yourself. So thank you for that. The aforementioned Patreon is up and running, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know what you would like to see on that there Patreon. Links in the show notes to join that. You can join as a free member, or you can join as a paid patron for $1 a month. Also,
did you ever figure out the whole listener support thing?
Okay. PSA. Spotify has listener support. Okay. You can do like $1 a month or $5 a month to support us through the Spotify platform. That is only available to US-based listeners. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the many reasons we started the Patreon, because Patreon, you can be anywhere in the world and support it. We've got 6 or 7 different types of currencies on the Patreon. It's very cool. So also for paid patrons, obviously you have bonus episodes now that we've just started doing. Those are in a separate feed that is behind the paywall. We cannot upload the bonus episodes to Spotify because you can either do listener support on Spotify or you can do subscriptions, but you can't do both. And so
can you just switch it over? You can't just switch it over.
Technically, yes. I'm just trying to. I'm assuming the most streamlined thing for people to do would be to become a paid supporter on Patreon.
Oh, okay.
Because then you get access to all that stuff, and I don't know. You guys let us know in comments on socials or on the Spotify app, wherever. Just let us know, because we're trying to figure this out. We want you guys to, we want to streamline this as much as possible, remove any barriers to support the podcast.
Yeah, technology hates me, so I just sort of try to figure as I go.
Only through subscriptions on Spotify can you actually upload bonus content for subscribers.
We're learning as we go.
We're learning as we go, folks. But, I would say up front, the most streamlined thing to do is to become a Patreon supporter, and all of the bonus content is going to be uploaded on there. We are also, of course, brainstorming about new types of content to do for Patreon supporters only, live streams, or, all kinds of stuff.
How do y'all feel about like a Facebook community? I know Facebook's kind of either your thing or not. I don't know. I have differing opinions on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. There's Facebook groups. There is, we could do a Discord, a private Discord server. Or I don't know if Patreon has a way to host private groups.
Sure, yeah. Just anyways, let you talk amongst yourselves about things.
Sure. We'll look into it. Also, we now have merch available for the podcast. We have the Tri-Blend t-shirt with the Poisoner's Almanac logo. And we also have die-cut stickers of the Poisoner's Almanac logo. Now, I fumbled the launch. I posted a video where Becca is modeling the t-shirt. The launch was kind of fumbled because the link for the merch store, I found out later, can take up to 24 hours to actually go live.
Also, model is very generous. I'm literally sitting in a chair.
She used to be a model when she was a teenager.
Okay. That lifestyle's not for me. So
yeah, I know, but you're basically a snack bar. Let's not kid ourselves. Yeah. What was I talking about? I got distracted by your beauty.
But snack bars, salad bars, they're all very gross. So I'd appreciate it if you didn't refer to me as that.
You know what I mean. Shut up.
I mean, bacteria everywhere. Viruses, just people spreading all kinds of stuff.
Shall I refer to you as a brain-eating amoeba?
I mean, they're pretty powerful.
Is that a compliment?
They take people out. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, I'd rather not be. Thanks. They're scary looking. Have you ever seen them?
I think
under like the microscope.
You showed me pictures.
Creepy.
When you've gone down a rabbit hole on Google, So, yeah, so that merch, the merch store should be available very soon. Hopefully by the time this episode airs, the link for that will be in the show notes as well. Remind me to send that to you. We got to put that in the show notes. Anyways, okay. Speaking of paid patrons, one of the perks of being a paid patron is you get shouted out on the podcast by name. And those people are as follows: 87 Pens Girl 71, Mara Santiago, Kate the Fairy, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shatreet, Jay Went, Inken Hafner, Kiri Yorsek, who sent us a very sweet direct message recently. Thank you, Kiri. Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Shane R., Sue Steves, James Miles, Megan Geiler, Liz B., Woolly Woof NZ, which is still my favorite.
You always laugh.
It's funny. Woolly Woof.
You're such a giggle box. Also, what is a giggle box? Is that a real thing?
It's me. That's what I am. Mama G, Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, Heather Nolan, Katie Rose, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, Maya Shostak. I think I'm saying that correctly. Maggie's Yarm, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket. What's up, Lynn? We see you. Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, which is...
That's cool.
I mean, you
can't... man, I can do a bonus episode on Houdini. Dude was cool.
Yes. Nicole Crane. That's Nicole with a CH. Okay, get it right. Jefferson Vargas. Thank you all so much for being paid supporters on Patreon. Also, the listener supporters on Spotify: Taylor McCaleb, Drew Revis, Delshawn Harris, and also Heather Nolan. She's double dipping.
We have a few of those.
Yeah,
we do.
So, thank you for that. I'm going to hypnotize you like Laszlo from What We Do in the Shadows. You will continue to pay on both platforms. You are unaware of the situation.
I love that freaking show.
Just kidding.
Freaking guy.
And finally, send us questions or content suggestions to the podcast Instagram via a comment or DM. All right. Honey, what are we talking about today?
We're not talking about honey. Okay. We're actually talking about
a term of endearment. You do understand what I'm saying, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But we are actually discussing a couple of nerve gases that we have not discussed yet.
Okay.
So we have discussed some chemicals used for terrorism and warfare already, including hydrogen cyanide, polonium, ricin. That was a fun episode.
I have seen the movie The Rock starring Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. I am an expert in this field.
Okay. Phosgene or phosphorus agents, chlorine gas, mustard gas, and a few various other nerve agents that we've talked about that we've mentioned, like is it VX, XV? I always get the letters like mixed up. But yeah, I know which one it is. But yeah, there's a few we have yet to discuss that I do believe deserve some time here. So sarin is a highly volatile nerve agent, and some around our age or living.
Fluoride.
Oh my god!
Just kidding.
It is not a nerve agent. Okay. I mean, it can act on. Okay.
If you drink a gallon of it, yeah.
Yeah, if you drink enough of it. Or
what do we say?
If you eat cockroach powder,
well,
it will definitely do a number on you.
We discussed that. The dose makes the poison. Am I right?
Yeah.
Come on, who's with me?
I feel like Leslie Knope all of a sudden in that one episode. Except for I'm not being mean to anybody. But yeah, I mean, yeah, just don't eat cockroach poison or swallow a whole bunch of toothpaste. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
And I feel like that has to be said because there's probably people who have done that.
Oh dear.
Or mouthwash. Things like, I don't know why you would drink mouthwash. That sounds gross. Anyway. So some around our age or living in Japan may know its name because of a terrorist attack by a cult group on the Tokyo subway some years ago.
Oh, right.
But before we discuss that, let's break down what sarin is and why it's so toxic. Now, nerve agents, if you remember, act upon the body's nervous system. They block the normal functioning of the chemicals normally passed along between nerve cells. I was just thinking about this morning. Like, we're basically like just like nerve soup, if you think about it. Like,
that's a fair description.
We're electrical impulse soup. Because we're a lot of water and some bones and some muscles and things, and then we're just sort of like just light it up, like just like that's just kind of how it is. Like,
it's true. It's fascinating to think about.
Well, even the heart has electrical mechanisms to it. So
speaking of, I have a patient right now. I told you about him. He has a pacemaker device that's monitored remotely, they cut off his monitoring because he moved.
Yeah, and like they told him they weren't going to do that, and they just sort of did it.
Yeah, they said, no, we're not going to cut you off. They cut him off, and then he went to the hospital because of atrial fibrillation.
I feel like there's a
lawsuit.
A lawsuit in there somewhere. That could be a
It must be.
Okay. Could at least, like, I don't know, give him a call.
Yeah.
Anyway, somebody goofed. Technically, the degradation of acetylcholine is interrupted and too many signals are sent through, leading to overload. That's what's happening when nerve agents are involved. And some of you are asking, what the heck is acetylcholine? Well, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that is involved in many of the body's functions, including muscle contraction, memory, learning, motivation. It is also released by the autonomic nervous system to help with heart rate regulation, blood pressure, and gut mobility, all of which involve the muscular system. Remember, the heart is a muscle, after all.
True. So, and the gut has motility.
Yeah.
So
it needs that, or you're going to be in pain along with some other stuff. Now, your body has this amazing system of regulating the amount of acetylcholine passed on to perform these tasks, and nerve agents like sarin just mess it all up, just wrecked it. So, too much acetylcholine allowed through causes such symptoms as cramping of muscles, increased salivation, muscle weakness, paralysis, muscular fasciculation. That's just fun to say. Diarrhea, blurry vision, Now, too little acetylcholine can cause issues as well. In fact, one autoimmune disorder known as myasthenia gravis, which I know you've heard of.
I've treated so many patients with that condition. Yeah.
It's caused by the body creating antibodies against acetylcholine receptors and inhibiting acetylcholine from getting through. As we know, autoimmune disorders, basically your body sees certain things as an enemy and starts attacking it. Like if I do have Hashimoto's, it means my body has seen my thyroid as an invader.
A foreign object. Yeah. Interesting.
Basically, from what I understand. It's been a while since I've even looked into some of these autoimmune disorders. But yeah, the autoimmune disorder is basically your immune system is attacking parts it shouldn't be attacking. So in this case, for myasthenia gravis, it prevents nerve impulses from triggering muscle contractions, so it causes severe weakness. The name comes from the Greek mys, meaning muscle, asthenia, meaning weakness, and then the Latin gravis, meaning serious. So it's pretty straightforward, name-wise.
Interesting.
I love a good straightforward name. Or if it's like if you learn a different language, like I took French in high school to be different, because we live in the South. Everybody was taking Spanish, and I already knew a little tiny bit of Spanish. So I was like, I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna take French.
I can watch Univision anytime I want. Let's get that French in here.
Yeah. So I took French, and I think seafood. The word for seafood is fruit de la mer. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but it's fruits of the sea, which I thought was great. I was like, that's just such a pretty way to say seafood.
And you still remember it to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Makes etymological sense to the English-speaking brain.
Yeah. I know somebody that's French is going to be like, she said that such an American way.
The DMs are already inbound. They're typing angrily.
I know. I'm American. I'm sorry.
They're using text-to-speech in their car.
Not only am I American, I'm a Southeastern American, so
we are notoriously I'm linguistically inhibited.
I say words that aren't even real. Ain't y'all ever gonna go over yonder? Okay. Sorry.
You're welcome, society.
Back to sarin. No, wait, you know what? Let's talk about what myasthenia gravis affects.
Yeah.
It affects muscles all over, but especially those in the face and around the eyes, those that allow for swallowing, speech, and eventually breathing. So it sucks pretty bad.
Yeah.
Now back to sarin. Now we know that it inhibits the breaking down of excess acetylcholine by it basically destroys acetylcholinesterase.
Okay.
Which is a mouthful. That's
got to be an enzyme that breaks down.
Yeah, it breaks down acetylcholine.
If a chemical name ends with ACE,
it's basically
it's an enzyme.
It breaks down acetylcholine. So it allows for way too much to reach the brain, and signs and symptoms of exposure could include runny nose or typical allergy symptoms at first. Then you would have tightness in your chest, pupil constriction, followed by nausea, trouble breathing, excess salivation. So you've got like drooling, uncontrolled drooling. You would soon experience losing control of all bodily functions, leading to vomiting, defecating, urinating. Basically, you're just no longer in control of the muscles in your body or what's going on with your body.
Yeah.
You would also experience uncontrollable muscle contractions, leading to twitching, spasming, convulsing, and eventually you'd be asphyxiated as the muscles required for breathing are affected. And death can occur within a few minutes to hours later after inhalation. So it's pretty rough. Now, sarin is odorless and colorless in its pure form. However, if it's made with additives or if it's impure, it smells like burnt rubber, apparently. And I'm pretty sure if you're smelling that, you don't have much time to get out because you've already inhaled some of it.
What you do not taste or smell is iocane powder.
Oh, my God. Brilliant movie.
Bonus episode. Is iocane powder real?
It's not.
Is that a thing?
No. I mean, it may be based on, particular.
You should do a bonus episode where you just make it up. Just make it up. You're basically like you use all the biggest words.
April Fools.
Yes.
April Fool's Day, we'll make up some iocane powder lore.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. Okay.
I've probably just given it away, but it's okay.
It's okay.
Now
you won't remember that we said this.
And anyway, sarin is considered a Schedule I substance and is a weapon of mass destruction. It can be a liquid at room temperature, and it has the ability to mix with water and vaporize at about the same rate as water does.
That is not good.
Nerve agents, however, are heavier than water as vapors, so they can stay low enough to the ground to affect pretty much any living thing in its path. So you can just kind of stay low where you are. So that sucks. It can also absorb through the skin, and it can stay on clothing for up to 30 minutes, which means you can actually contaminate others for that amount of time if you've got it like on your clothing. So pure sarin is 26 times deadlier than cyanide, for comparison.
Ooh.
It's pretty rough. So is there an antidote? Yes, and without it, sarin gas exposure is deadly.
Okay.
Funny enough, one of the medications used for the antidote is another poison we have discussed, atropine.
Get out of here.
Extracted from the nightshade family, Solanaceae, the basically deadly nightshade, the datura, henbane, mandrake, etc. Atropine blocks acetylcholine action at muscarinic receptors. It's fun. Nearby, reducing the surge of acetylcholine. So it sort of backs up that, whole process. So it's basically stopping that much acetylcholine from getting through.
Right, which is the primary action of the sarin gas. Okay.
It can also help stabilize the heart rate in this way. I'm not sure if this is still a thing, but soldiers once carried auto-injectors of atropine in case of a nerve gas attack. Because you have to remember, there was a lot of use of chemical weapons during, honestly, both world wars. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the First World War is what? The Chemists' War? Is that what they called it?
Did they really?
I think they called it the Chemists'
I never
War.
knew that.
I'm pretty sure it was the First World War. I'll have to look into
they
that.
had gas masks with like standard equipment.
Yeah, and the First World War was crazy because you've got some people on horseback and then you got other people in tanks. I mean, it was just like
it was an overlap,
a collision of like different times, and it was
the beginning of weapons of mass destruction. Also, trench warfare.
Yeah, it's
like it's 1815.
It was pretty rough. There's no, and gory, I'm sure. Pretty awful. Now, atropine in this case is used alongside pralidoxime, which is essentially an acetylcholinesterase reactivator so that it can continue to break down.
Okay.
So, and it restores the acetylcholinesterase so that acetylcholine can be broken down again, relieving the symptoms of the overload caused by nerve agent exposure. So it's helpful in that regard. There's other oximes too. This is just the one that seemed like it was the most common that they used. If exposed to sarin gas, it is important to leave the contaminated area, obviously, and immediately, to find higher ground because the gas is denser, it'll stay lower. And you should remove all clothing, flush your eyes with water as best you can, and wash all over using soap and water. Production and stocking of sarin gas was prohibited in 1997 by the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1993, but to be honest, some people don't seem to care about that. So
what?
Let's take a stroll through history.
Why would they do that?
So yeah, let's look at this.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me there's terrible people all over the world?
Oh, she doesn't even go here. So so let's go. Let's look at this through a historical lens.
I just saw. It just totally popped in my head. I saw a post on Instagram about Lacey Chabert, who tried to make fetch happen. Her daughter asked her, "Mom, what does fetch mean?"
I thought you were going to say she named her daughter Fetch. I'm like, oh my God, please don't. Okay.
And the post on Instagram was like, "Congratulations, she made fetch happen."
You know what? Perseverance.
That's right.
Now, so these are organophosphate compounds that have become nerve agents. They are used for malicious intent such as war and terrorism. They were actually invented in the 1930s, though, in Germany as insecticides. So it was supposed to be used as an insecticide, basically got turned around and used for this other stuff.
It'll kill the bugs, all right.
It will kill everything else, too. Sarin was specifically invented in 1938 or 39, sort of accidentally. As I said, they were looking for possible insecticides and discovered Formula 146, which I immediately in my head, I kept getting confused with Experiment 626.
Experiment 626.
No, not Stitch.
Here, educate yourself.
Oh my God. So, but yeah, Formula 146 would become Sarin. It was named Sarin as an acronym for the scientists who discovered / invented it. Not something I would want to be named after me, but okay.
Wow.
But Sarin was produced and stockpiled for war purposes in America and the USSR during the early 1950s, as NATO considered it a standard chemical weapon at the time. Fun. Yeah, so regular production of sarin actually stopped in America around 1957, though there were still stocks of the stuff until 1970. In March of 1988, Iraqi Air Force under Saddam Hussein released chemical bombs over the Kurdish city, I hope I say this right, forgive me if I don't, Halajah in northern Iraq. These bombs included sarin, and about 5,000 people were killed, mainly civilians.
What a guy.
A month later, Iraq would use sarin 4 more times against Iranians. In May of 2004, Iraqi insurgents detonated a bomb intended for a U.S. convoy. This bomb was supposed to self-mix agents that would produce sarin gas, but it mostly failed, thankfully. Some sarin gas was produced enough for 2 U.S. soldiers to need care, but for the most part, it fizzled out.
Thank God.
And these next incidents sort of happened during the Syrian civil war, which I think began around 2012, but is honestly still kind of going on. So in March of 2013, sarin was used in an attack near Aleppo in Syria, killing 28 and wounding 124. It was used again later that year during the Syrian civil war as well. The death toll this time was between 322 to 1,700. We just don't have enough, reporting or documents based on it. In 2018, Syrian Air Force released sarin via an airstrike over what they considered rebel territory in Idlib province. The death toll this time was around 89 to 92, and there were over 541 injuries. Now, the governments and militaries of the US, UK, France, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, as well as the Human Rights Watch, were all like, yeah, this was the Syrian government. The Syrian government was like, I didn't do anything. Why are you blaming me? And Putin over in Russia was like...
That's a direct quote.
Putin over in Russia is like, it was staged. It's definitely staged.
Oh, man.
Because he's trustworthy.
We are not the droid you're looking for.
Oh, my God. Anyway, 72 hours after the attack, the U.S. sent 59 cruise missiles to the airbase that the airstrike was reported to have come from. Now, I do not have a deep knowledge into the Syrian civil war or the politics surrounding the topic in other countries, so that is where I will leave that info. Another incident I do want to discuss that involves sarin is what happened in Tokyo, in Japan in 1995. While sarin has been obviously used as a chemical weapon of warfare, some have forgotten its use in a cult-driven terrorist attack on the subway system of Tokyo about 30 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
So, the cult behind the attacks was called Shinrikyo. I hope I'm saying that right, but that's, yeah. It's from the Sanskrit Om, meaning universe, and Shinrikyo, meaning supreme truth. So that was the name of the cult.
Mm-hmm.
It was founded by Shoko Asahara. His real name was Chizuo Matsumoto. He was born in 1955, partially blind due to infantile glaucoma. And he attended a school for the blind. And since he was unable to work for his family or go into the family business, he essentially never went home again. Like, they just kind of sent him to the school, I guess. And he just stayed at the school. So that's kind of sad.
Oh,
yeah,
that's tough.
And he was said to be a bully while there. He graduated in 1975 from that school and wanted to go into politics.
Great.
Having
no regard for human life. Tell you what, you're you belong here.
No, he once told his classmates that he would rule Japan someday. So
okay, buddy.
But he was rejected in that arena. Now, he then wanted to study medicine, but was unable to get into medical school, so he started studying acupuncture and pharmacology. He opened this pharmacy selling like traditional Chinese medicine sort of stuff and remedies. And this is in Japan. Yes, I know. I said Chinese medicine. That's literally what I read, that he was doing like Chinese medicine type stuff.
Interesting.
So some sort of traditional medicine. He was actually arrested in 1982 for fraud after practicing as a pharmacist without a license and selling unregulated drugs.
Okay.
So he was basically just fined and sent on his way. I mean, he was fined a good bit, but he was fined and sent on his way. At this time, he was also married, and they had like 6 children.
Wow.
So, he's trying to figure out how to support all that, which I'm sure was rough. He became interested in various religions and spiritual practices like Chinese astrology and, is it Taoism? Isn't it Taoism? Because I remember when I was younger and inexperienced, and I was like, Taoism. It's like, no, it's Taoism.
Oh, is it spelled with a T or a D?
T. But I think I'm pretty sure you pronounce it Taoism.
Okay. That would have thrown me.
If I remember humanities correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Taoism. If it's not, please correct me.
Send us a strongly worded comment.
Maybe not strongly worded, okay?
Just kidding.
Just, maybe a gentle tap on the shoulder. It's not that. Yes. Later, he would add such practices involved in esoteric Buddhism and esoteric Christianity. Now, he started the cult that he's known for in his 1-bedroom apartment in Tokyo. I'm not sure where the 6 kids were.
Wow.
I'm not sure where they were, but he started this in 1987. At first it was a yoga and meditation class that he called Umo Shinsen no Kai, which translates to Immortal Mountain Wizard Association.
Okay.
So
you got the word wizard in there, huh?
I'm not gonna lie, it feels a little D&D-ish. Like Mountain Wizard Association, the MWA.
Are you a dungeon master?
Gosh. It became an official religious organization a few years later. Now, it actually drew in quite a lot of members from like highly respected colleges. So it earned this sort of reputation of being a religion for higher classes, the elite, mind you, which I find very strange. Like, you can be incredibly smart and still be manipulated into a cult.
It is not a function of intelligence.
Right. It's a
highly educated people, highly accomplished people get roped into high control, high demand groups. Cults.
It's interesting to me.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. So he actually used his love of comics and manga and science fiction in the movement.
Okay.
as well. He had like comics and manga and animated videos basically to present his beliefs and values. I'm pretty sure you could probably still go online and look some of these cartoons up.
Wow.
Yeah. He also had a picture of himself levitating that many of his followers believed was real. Like he's.
There is always some sort of photographic evidence involved. Okay, I've mentioned early American Pentecostalism, William Branham.
Mm-hmm.
I've been learning a ton about that whole movement. There was a photo that was circulated all throughout the movement that says there was a halo above his head.
It's probably just a light thing.
It was literally a glitch of light exposure on the photo. The movement claimed they hired an FBI agent to certify that this photo is real, which they also made up. That guy never worked for the FBI.
Also, like, what does that even mean? Can an FBI agent do that?
It works for followers. It works to galvanize a movement. It drums up belief. I just love that he did. That's so funny that they did the same thing.
Yeah. I think you'll see a lot of similarities within cults, like between cults.
Yes.
And that's not this. I'm not against religion at all. I think it can be very helpful to people, but cults are the other thing where they're not helpful. They're actually controlling and manipulative and taking people's money and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think. Yeah. So he basically had this picture of him levitating. And even today, you've got people that fall for AI images all the time.
Oh, my God.
It's
hysterical.
Yeah. Like there'll be an AI image and they're like,
why does this photo go viral?
Oh, my God. That guy is so funny.
A Liberian flag.
But yeah, basically, like I've known people who are like, I saw this picture and I'm like, that was not real.
That was made by a computer.
So yeah, just be careful what you're looking at.
I've seen some chatter about how millennials, like our age group, we quickly kind of sort through, for the most part, sort through fake things on the internet.
We're pretty cynical though, I feel like, as a group of
we were like, okay, my first time ever being on Facebook was like 2005.
I know MySpace was there first. I had my MySpace. I had like, you could like decorate your page and put music on it. It was great.
Totally. It was the heyday of social media. But like, that I was in college. So I fully remember a world without the internet. And that's somewhat helpful because we're like, well, it's the internet, man. It's not the internet's not everything on the internet's true or real. But then there's these other people who are not digital natives and they're like, oh my God, why doesn't this trend?
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
and I'm sure there's been, like just in like news and other things, like people have believed, like didn't like War of the Worlds air on the radio and people literally thought there was an actual.
Yes. They thought it was true.
So
they thought
like,
it was the news.
The first time that's happened, but I feel like it's definitely escalated since.
Is fascinating
because you can use the internet you can use the internet for like really good purposes, but then you can like
a podcast,
but then the internet can be really bad for some people.
Oh man.
So
it will amplify whatever sort of critical thinking skill you did or did not have.
Well, I remember like when I was in college, you could not use like Wikipedia as a source,
right?
But like now, like I see kids like you can like, at least in school, like you can use it. I'm like, because. And I'm not downing Wikipedia. I mean, it's a good fast source. But like, if I use Wikipedia, I always double check with another source because it's not a primary source or
that's right,
anything like that.
It's an amalgamation website.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful to a lot of people, but I feel like if you're going to quote it, you're going to want to make sure it's coming from more of a primary source, right? So
yes, but that leads us back to once again the epistemological crisis of the modern age.
It's actually hard to get some primary sources these days on the internet. Everybody wants you to pay for things, pay for the subscription.
True.
Subscription.
That's very true.
So I mean, it is.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of healthy public education and access to helpful information.
Yes. So don't disregard libraries, guys. Libraries are a big deal. Definitely go take advantage of those libraries before we don't have them anymore. Hopefully that never becomes a reality. Anyway, now, yes, he had a picture of himself levitating. People thought it was real. Other beliefs that the group had were that they could heal illnesses. There's a common denominator.
Oh my God.
Enlightenment through the reprogramming of their minds using electrode caps. That feels more Scientology-ish.
I love it.
To me, but
they're one step away from tinfoil.
Yeah. So I think he believed that he could pass over his thoughts into his followers' thoughts, and so like it would make them more perfect.
That's actually not that far from the truth.
Yeah,
that is what he's doing.
I mean, yeah, in a way, but like he thought he could just like mentally do it, like in some sort of psychic way with the electrode caps.
And that's a brilliant idea because you're not even like it bypasses any sort of pretension, and you're just basically making other people's thoughts yours. There are techniques, like rough general hypnosis techniques, public speaking techniques that actually do disarm the critical mind.
Now, drugs were also common in this particular cult, as they are in quite a few cults, honestly. LSD was used by initiates alongside yoga practices, or what he called yoga practices. I'm not even sure if what he was using was actual yoga. But Asahara had gotten really into biblical prophecies at this point.
You're kidding.
So the whole doomsday thing was really
up Revelation?
Likely, yeah.
Gotta be.
Like the whole doomsday thing was really up his alley. And remember, we talked about cults a while back where we had like the different kinds.
It's not even a Christian cult, and they grabbed onto Christian doomsday eschatology.
Well, yeah, because it's there.
I love that. So
it's there,
hysterical.
And there's other. I mean, Norse mythology has its own doomsday stuff. I mean, there's doomsday theology,
Ragnarok.
Yeah, in all kinds of cultures.
Wow.
Christianity is definitely not the first to have a doomsday or Armageddon type thing.
Well, I've seen the Thor movies, so I'm an expert in this field.
Oh my God. But yeah, he got really into that. And like I said, that we discussed various cults when we talked about Jonestown a bit with the cyanide stuff. And we talked about how there can be, doomsday cults. You've got political cults. You've got, a couple of different kind of cults.
Even if it's not doomsday, quote unquote, there is some sort of mechanism that creates false urgency. Like the urgency of the hour.
Well, I think also if the leader starts to feel out of control, there's this, this whole ship's coming down with me. I'm not losing all this.
Yes.
And
start putting cyanide and Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a time where the pastor of the church where I went to for years, he thought he had identified the Antichrist.
I feel like I hear that everywhere. It's like, he's the Antichrist, she's the Antichrist.
No, but it wasn't a political figure.
We live in the South, so we hear about the Antichrist a lot.
Yes, far too often. He put this man's, it was a random member of the Jordanian government.
Oh Lord.
And he thought that he had sleuthed out who the Antichrist is.
That's dangerous to me because
it's
now,
so
because now you're like being like, all right, attack this guy. Maybe not in those terms, but you really are.
Yeah. And so he literally said, after he explained everything, took like an hour. He was like, I'm not saying he is the Antichrist, but he could be. And he smiled really big. And I was like,
that's so strange.
What is happening? But it didn't read again.
Yeah.
40-year-old me is like, that's nuts. 20-something-year-old me was like, wow, that's wild if that's him.
I was in it. This is making sense. So much of this is making sense. Sense. He wouldn't lie to me. This guy, he knows more than me, right?
I've been taught to hate people from the Middle East since 9/11. This makes sense.
Also, Jesus is from the Middle East.
Listen. There's also no consistency.
I get so confused by.
Sorry, yeah. I feel like there's so much I could talk about with cults because I used to be in one. Let's continue.
Look. Racism and all of that stuff, it will always be so confusing to me.
Well, it's not based on
logic, I know, but
is it?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's ridiculous and it should end, but here we are. He actually, like I said, he was into science fiction.
Okay.
So he actually referenced Isaac Asimov.
How dare you?
From the Foundation's, series.
Such a good show.
Something about books. They started as books.
Yes, I know.
Okay. Something about spiritually evolved scientists being forced to hide underground to prepare themselves for the rebuilding of humanity when it was time. And as you know, like I said, he's got a lot of these people who are they're professionals. Like they came from these universities. They're smart. He's got some scientists there.
Yes.
So they were into being humble. Even though he doesn't sound very humble to me.
Sorry. So was I.
And yeah. and non-materialistic. Though they did have like an armored Mercedes that was given to them. So, okay. Now he had followers from authority figures, like too. So like he had followers from like the Japanese self-defense forces and the Japanese Metropolitan Police.
Tom Cruise.
He's not Japanese.
You know what I'm saying.
Okay.
One of the best ways to propagate your cult.
Oh, like Scientology.
Oh yeah. One of the best ways to propagate your cult is to get somebody famous to join.
Yeah.
It's not difficult.
This, let's see. This probably helped them get away with a lot of stuff that they did before the Sarin attacks. Yes, there was more than one attack. Before I go there, though, I do want to mention that the cult became more and more, well, culty. So members were often held against their will, forced to give money, to the organization. And there were some dangerous practices involved, such as being given drugs and then being hung upside down for long periods of time, and also given shock therapy.
Yes.
So there's that.
And these are all mechanisms to disarm the critical mind.
Right. And you're taught that, this is good for you spiritually. You just need to do this.
In the same way that fasting was used.
Yes. You will ascend in some way.
Yes. You will reach a higher spiritual level.
Right. Destroy yourself to gain yourself.
But practically what's happening is you're depleting your own physical body so that you cannot defend yourself against a legitimate threat.
Yeah. And also, like, now you're too tired and weak to even think that maybe this is not right.
That's right. It takes what I guess you would call it adaptive energy to engage in critical thought to get yourself out of a high control situation. Ask me how I know. Actually, don't. We need to stay focused.
Okay. Now, one member actually died during one of these rituals, and he was quickly cremated, as you can imagine.
Of course he was.
When another member tried to leave after this, because he knew what had happened, he was strangled, and his body was also cremated. Because they didn't want to getting out, so they just killed this guy too, I guess.
I love it so much. It's almost like shooting a congressman on an airport in Central America.
Look at you, Jonestown.
Hey-o.
So there was this anti-cult lawyer representing the families that were trying to get, like, their family members and loved ones out of the cult.
Yeah.
His name was Tsutsumi Sakamoto, and his family, his wife and his 14-month-old, actually went missing from their apartment in 1989 after he had attempted to investigate and bring a lawsuit against the cult and its leader.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were actually found dead sometime after the 1995 attacks, about 6 years after being killed, pretty much. They had all been injected with potassium chloride and either strangled or smothered. The deaths would be attributed to the cult later, but like I said, they weren't found until after these other attacks. So
that is
I did want to mention that because a lot of people don't know that. Now, Asahara, the guy that started the cult, he apparently had a list of people to assassinate, basically anyone that was critical of Shinrikyo, the cult, or its leader. He would even have members within the cult killed as he suspected they might be spies. So, like, his paranoia was just growing, which you see a lot in cults too. Especially these doomsday cults. Paranoia starts growing. Never a good sign. He was also beginning to tell others that he was the reincarnation of both Jesus Christ and Buddha.
Oh my God. It's like,
I'm telling you, this is predictable.
Brick by brick, it's the same thing. I mean, William Branham claimed the same thing.
Cults typically do this, though, so that they can,
They got to keep the urgency alive.
So he basically said he was the savior of Japan.
Amazing.
And he tried getting some of his members into Japanese parliament, thinking this would help him become prime minister someday, because, he wanted to rule Japan, he said. But this failed. This is when he began making predictions that disasters were coming to the country, as well as a third world war and, of course, Armageddon. He prophesied that America was going to wreck everything and bring all this about.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not going to say anymore on it, but...
but probably.
Which I guess made it sound, like, yeah, that could happen. I don't know.
Well, think practically.
I'm just joking here, but I'm just saying, like,
it's funny because it's true. But like, for the Japanese, we've dropped 2 atomic bombs on their mainland.
Yeah,
that's a plausible. It's a good choice on his part. I respect it. Also I hate him, but I respect it.
It was terrible.
Awful.
awful what happened there.
Never to happen again.
And honestly, we should discuss, those two incidents, because
Can't we?
It's funny how things sort of like aren't talked about, and I'm not saying like Japan is innocent, because there's things we could talk about.
Certainly.
Like,
certainly.
But like, yeah, I'm always appalled when I read about the two bombs. So
the Oppenheimer movie did a decent job of alluding to all those issues.
Yeah. And I mean, I think much later, maybe not much later, but he was pretty guilt-ridden about a lot of that. So
yeah. At what cost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, he's making all these predictions. He prophesied about America being, the cause of all these disasters.
You could just interchange his words with people who are in cults right now. It's a carbon copy.
Yeah. Now, the more elite or experienced members were busy making chemical agents and nerve agents, such as sarin and VX, to use in order to end humanity. They were doing this because they were like, well, if we end humanity, then we can rebuild it and thus save humanity.
The tribulation.
There you go.
This is the Great Tribulation from the Christian Bible.
Or I guess Left Behind, really.
Yes, all that.
Because I feel like a lot of the stuff, like I've read the book of Revelation. Is it just Revelation, or the book of
The Revelation of Jesus Christ is its technical title.
I've read it, and I don't understand where they get some of the stuff that they talk about, to be honest.
Right. Well, they read it as if it's
and
not...
nothing against anybody who's totally into it. Go for it. I just don't like having read that, and then I read the Left Behind series before I ended up.
And you thought it was fiction.
I did.
You thought it was historical fiction.
Not historical fiction. I just thought it was fantasy fiction.
Right.
Like,
you thought it was made for entertainment.
Or dystopian, yeah.
No, ma'am.
And then I met you at that church, and then next thing
you said that.
And then next thing I know, people are like,
so
no.
Left Behind. And then I met you, and I was like, oh wow.
No, because people were like, oh no, this is real, and we have to prepare for it. Well, you were at the place.
I met you at that church, and you had a cup of Kool-Aid, and the way you struggled. I'm not in a cult, I swear to God. But I was, but I'm not. So we can laugh now.
Anyway, it was very.
This smoking hot girl showed up at church, and I married her. That's how I got out of the cult.
Well, it was strange to me, because I'm like, people believe that this is real. People think
100%.
And I'm not saying there's no end of the world. I'm just saying
we could bring it about. I mean, we could totally mess things up.
I'm just saying, and if you believe in some of this, I'm not trying to make fun of it or anything. I think though, just having read that book in the Bible, and then having read Left Behind, I could not connect the two.
Okay, so the reason is you were reading the literature apart from the programming.
The rapture is not in the Bible.
It is not. It's made up. It was made up less than 200 years ago. The reason that you can read that as an outsider is because you are not in the programming environment. The people who wrote it are involved in the programming environment. They have been programmed, and they're contributing to more programming. They are victims and perpetrators.
Well, this podcast episode is turning into everything about cults.
Listen, I'm enjoying it so much.
Everything about cults right here.
Okay, I'm so into it.
And
I just love that I summarized our meeting that way. This smoking hot girl showed up to my cult, and she got me out. That's our marriage.
Well, it was it was a cult disguised as a church. I'm not saying all churches are culty.
No.
But there are some churches that are culty.
Baby.
So, yeah, he had this whole list of people. He was like, yeah, I could totally get rid of these people. He wanted to be the savior of Japan, he wanted to rule Japan, all this stuff. He's got people in his labs making nerve gases. And they actually had people in other parts of the world too. They actually had members in Russia by now. They were trying to get like a large supply of AK-47s and a helicopter from Russia. You know.
Of course it was them.
Which I'm pretty sure they got the helicopter at least, and maybe a few guns. But that's pretty, like, that's determination. How the heck do you get a helicopter? Just, anyway.
How do you fly that into the airspace?
They also attempted to release anthrax spores, and we're going to talk about anthrax after a while too. At one point from a cooling tower to try to start an outbreak in the area, but this did not result in any infections. Another time they tried to send members to the Democratic Republic of Congo to get some of the Ebola virus that was going around so they could use it in a sort of bioterrorism attack.
This is just...
this also fails, thankfully.
It's just unconscionable to go to these lengths. It's like, what are you doing? Why?
Because they really believe that the end is near.
It all comes back to belief, man.
Yeah.
It's just
belief can be crazy. I mean, like, it can be good and it can be crazy. So,
sure.
Yeah. But yeah, thankfully that failed. On June 27th, 1994, members released sarin that they had made, hard to do, by the way, without killing yourself. I don't know.
They don't seem like the most skilled handlers of weapons of mass destruction.
But they are scientists. There are some here with PhDs, believe it or not. But still, trying to make sarin and all that yourself, you could easily end yourself. So this is 1994, a year before, obviously, the 1995 attacks. They released this sarin at an apartment building in the city of Matsumoto, Nagano. So they were trying to do this to test the product, but also to kill 3 judges living there. And these judges were apparently like planning to rule against them in some upcoming lawsuit. So they were like, we'll just, kill them. So they used a converted refrigerator truck that was made to heat up the chemicals to make an aerosol form of sarin. And these fans would be there to blow them towards the building. Except, the wind did change. Wind does do that. About 274 people would end up needing treatment. Up to 500 were harmed and 8 were killed. None of the judges were killed, but they were injured. Now, the ones that were killed were mainly innocent civilians living in the apartment building. Anything else living in the area, including animals and plants, were also killed. Like trees, pets, anything.
Wow.
Anything, let's see. Forensic investigators found the source of the poisoning and were able to test and determine that it was sarin. They were able to find the epicenter of where it was released and all that. Mm-hmm. Now, it would not be until after the 1995 attacks that Shinrikyo was implicated in this attack, though. Now, they
never took credit for anything. Like they didn't want to publicly.
No, they weren't doing that, but
probably because they were domestic. Like they were there in Japan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Japan was having this sort of, they were trying to allow for religious freedom a bit because of everything that had happened, in the recent wars. They just wanted to try to be more.
Oh, interesting.
But this one sort of went out of hand, I guess.
Wow.
Now, getting to the 1995 sarin attacks, the morning of March 20th, 1995, 5 members of the cult got on different subway trains on 3 different lines that were all going to, forgive me if I say this wrong, Kasumigaseki station.
Okay.
Around the same time. This station was a center of national administration and politics and was close to the parliament building as well as other government agencies. They all had a plastic sack holding liquid sarin and umbrellas with sharp tips. At the planned areas, they put the bags on the ground and pierced them several times so that the liquid sarin could vaporize on contact with the air.
And kill them immediately.
No, they left and got into cars that drove them away, but one of them did have to use an atropine-filled syringe as he had accidentally poisoned himself. They carried those with them, just in case. Okay. So the sarin gas spread throughout the trains and station area quickly. People began to stumble and gasp for breath as they were exposed. A lot they don't know what's going on. Many were blinded and had blood running from their mouths and noses. There was coughing and vomiting. Some were convulsing, then collapsing. And of course, panic ensued as everyone was just desperate to get away from the piles of bodies and into some fresh air. The chemical warfare unit came dressed in protective gear to neutralize a poison not really all that well known to them at this point, while people were carried away by paramedics. 13 people died in the attack, 54 were seriously injured, and there is a possibility that up to 6,000 people were affected in some way.
Wow.
The 5 men that carried the sarin and released it were actually very smart, apart from being brainwashed into a cult, unfortunately. 3 had physics degrees. Another was an experienced doctor. Police.
Yeah.
Police raided the cult's headquarters in Kamikushiki near Mount Fuji and found explosives, more chemical weapons, and that helicopter that I mentioned. Anyway, millions of dollars in cash were also found, methamphetamines, LSD, and some sort of truth serum. Not sure what was in that, but here we are. Verita serum. No, it wasn't first. It was just with their version of a truth serum. And stocks of chemicals that could be used to make enough sarin to kill millions. So some members were arrested immediately, but Asahara was in hiding. He was finally found at a compound in a secret room where he was meditating, and he was arrested on live TV. Now, it took a time, but over 150 cult members were arrested for the attack and earlier attacks. Asahara tried to use his blindness as a defense, but was convicted for the murder of 27 people in different indictments. And he was sentenced to death on February 7th, 2004. Mm-hmm. Now, 12 other members were also sentenced to death, which these were his closest and most loyal disciples, basically. There was some question over whether Asahara was fit, mentally to stand trial, but it was found that he was well enough, and the death penalty and conviction stayed as it was. Now, the cult itself was stripped of any status as a religion, for obvious reasons. Asahara was executed on July 6th, 2018, so it was some years, after, by hanging, as were 6 other cult members. It turns out that Asahara had fallen far short of the death toll he had imagined the day of the 1995 sarin attacks. He had intended for thousands to die and to implicate America so that the final war could begin. Because a lot of this is actually reminding me of the Manson murders, because they were trying to cause a war as well. Okay. You should know, however, that the cult was renamed Aleph and has been under new management since 2000.
They put a sign on the front door.
They do condemn the sarin gas attacks. A lot of them couldn't refuse to believe at first that their leader was responsible for such a thing, because I guess they were not, those that weren't his closest disciples didn't think that he would do something like that.
Not everybody in the group
was as close. Yeah. But so they condemned the attacks and all that done by their previous leader and those other members. And the dude that took over this time, he actually made another religious group later called Hikaru no Wa, which is translated to Circle of Light.
Okay.
So both groups have been under government surveillance for obvious historical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I love that there was a guy who was there to be like, okay, I'll step in. Another nut job.
Well, I think what happened, and honestly, when they came back to play, they had about 1,500 members who were yeah, let's keep doing this, but not that. Right? So.
And they will simply just devolve into the same behavior.
I mean, I hope not, but I think they are more about, I think now they're more about peace and just not being materialistic and those parts of it.
Okay.
I don't know about the actual religious study or doctrine they believe in, if it's the amalgamation of the stuff that, because he was basically putting Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity kind of together and adding some stuff of his own, and then it became big doomsday-ish.
I love it.
So a little bit of everything. Little bit of everything all of the time. Sorry.
It feels like I grew up in church in America, in the American South, so it feels like a church split, or the pastor.
This do happen a lot.
Yeah, the church, or the pastor got caught sleeping with a secretary, so
he got sent to a camp for rehab, basically a quote unquote camp, where he probably just cried a little bit, and they were like, "Oh, he's
repentance
cured. He can go back into leadership now."
I think it starts a podcast.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And the wife gets pressured to stay because divorce is wrong.
Yes. And she's used to being rich at this point.
No lie. We're not even making fun of anybody. That happens a lot around here.
Yeah.
A lot. So.
Anyways, back to poison.
Now we're going to talk about Novichok. Okay. Novichok means newcomer in Russian. It was first developed in the Soviet Union in the 1970s in a secret government program known as Foliant. Obviously not secret anymore, but it was created to be undetectable to the chemical detection equipment of NATO at the time and to get around NATO protective gear. Which, I mean, kind of menacing, but okay. This weapon was actually made public in the 1990s by Russian scientist and eventual defector Vil Mirzayanov. And I say first made public, but like apparently like some of this stuff had already been in the papers because Russia basically admitted to making this stuff, you know, when they brought treason charges against this guy. Okay. He was jailed but released because in the reports he wrote, he really hadn't said anything new about like the names of things or like where things were being made. And these reports were first released in Russian news publications. Though he did give it an interview for the Baltimore Sun. Okay. So there's that.
Shout out to the Baltimore Sun being on top of stuff.
Now, it was likely international pressure that helped get him released. And he moved to America very soon after, which, yeah. Now, the lab in Uzbekistan where it was being made was eventually dismantled and decontaminated. Cleanup was finished around 2002. Really not that long ago.
Yeah.
Novichok is also odorless and colorless, and similar to the nerve agent VX, it can be given as a liquid, powder, gas, or aerosol. It acts on acetylcholinesterase as well, in much the same way as the other nerve agents do. It prevents the breakdown of acetylcholine, as we went over, overloading the body with nerve impulses, leading to death via respiratory failure. This one, however, seems to sort of involve like the lungs filling with fluid as well, though. And so like you kind of either drown or asphyxiate, one of the two.
Wow. It's brutal.
Yeah, or cardiac arrest during said respiratory failure. Like other nerve agents, symptoms of Novichok exposure include pupil constriction, respiratory distress, high heart rate, sweating, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, convulsions, loss of consciousness, and death. Those who do survive with medical intervention, mind you, can have lasting neurological damage. Okay. One Soviet scientist working with it, Andrei Zeleznyakov.
Nailed it.
Andrei Zeleznyakov.
I'll bet you.
I'm doing my best.
Maya Shostak could
probably
assist.
Yes. I don't think my mouth could handle Russian very well.
It is a primordial soup of consonants
sitting
right
like
next to each other.
When you have a which I don't even know if I have a Southern accent much, but I feel like it doesn't go hand in hand with the way the mouth moves.
Gosh.
So I'm trying my best. But when he was working with it, he was accidentally exposed to fumes, causing him to hallucinate and faint. He never truly recovered fully and was disabled until his death 5 years later. Like his health just got worse and worse until he died.
Okay.
Now, Germany was able to retrieve a sample in 2018 thanks to their Secret Service, and they shared it with other parts of Europe, Britain, and the U.S. for testing purposes, to figure out what this stuff was, how to, prevent it from doing bad things. Now, treatment is similar to sarin gas exposure and involves atropine and an oxide such as pralidoxime to stop the poison from destroying acetylcholinesterase so that acetylcholine can be broken down appropriately. So we discussed those two medications already, but it must be given soon after exposure to work in this case, really in all cases, but respiratory symptoms such as paralysis or fluid filling the lungs are relieved at the hospital so long as care is available. Like otherwise you're going to, if you don't get it quick, that respiratory failure is going to get you.
Mm-hmm.
So history of use, let's talk about it. While it was created for military purposes, there were actually I think 5 variants created in the Soviet Union of this stuff. It has reportedly never been used in war. Mikhail Gorbachev.
Never used in war?
No, but we're getting there.
Okay.
Gorbachev announced in 1987 that the Soviet Union was going to stop making chemical weapons, but this was a lie because they kept producing and testing Novichok secretly. Naughty.
It's so Russia.
Now, in 1995, a banker in Moscow named Ivan Kveldy died as a result of a Novichok agent being applied to his office phone. His secretary would later be hospitalized and die as well. Ivan Kveldy was the head of the Russian Business Roundtable, and he had ties to government officials such as Viktor Chernomyrdin. I don't know if I said that right, but he was the prime minister at the time. A former business partner, Vladimir Kutsishvili.
Yes.
Ugh. Vladimir Kutsishvili. Leave me alone.
Oh, man.
He was blamed for the 2 deaths, but he has always sworn that he was innocent and being framed because it was Russian security officers who had killed Ivan. Now, Vladimir left Russia, but he came back 10 years later thinking the case was done with, and he was actually arrested because apparently it was not done with. Now, another incident occurred in 2018 that you may have seen in the news. 2 people, a man in his 60s and his 33-year-old daughter, were found unresponsive on a park bench on March 8th, 2018. At the time, it had been assumed that they had overdosed. But this was in Salisbury in Wiltshire, England. So no one suspected anything crazy happening like this. The daughter, Yulia Skripal, who had come in from Moscow the day before to visit her father, was actually foaming at the mouth, and her eyes were just white. All you could see were the whites of her eyes, basically. Her father, Sergei.
Her what now?
Her father.
You said farther.
Farther. Her father, Sergei.
Our friend Aaron is in the room. We both looked at her and she goes, yes, she said farther.
Okay, look. Been a long week. What's a dad?
Immediately she goes, yes.
Oh my God.
Well done. You may stay.
Her father, Sergei Skripal, was once a Russian intelligence officer and double agent for Britain. He was caught selling secrets to Britain's Secret Service, M16. You ever heard of him? M16.
M16.
Yeah, those guys.
I've heard of, is that a British?
Secret Service.
Oh, okay. I've only ever heard of MI5.
Oh, I don't know. M16.
Okay.
And he was jailed for a 13-year sentence. But in 2010, he moved to England after his release was won in this sort of spy swap. I feel like that's like Spy Kids, but not Spy Kids. Spy swap. Anyway, he had been living a sort of semi-retired life in Wiltshire ever since. He and his daughter had gone to lunch at a restaurant in Salisbury and left the place around 3:35 in the afternoon. By 4:15, they were found like this on the bench. It was quickly realized that they had been poisoned, and when they were taken to the hospital, so was the first officer on the scene, as he too had been contaminated and poisoned. Thankfully, the poison was quickly identified as Novichok, a strain known as A234, and it was known that only a high official would have been able to release this sort of thing. So, 2 men were found to be responsible: Colonel Anatoly Chapiga and Colonel Alexander Mishkin. They were traveling under different names, but they had brought a tiny vial of this trial perfume. You open the little cardboard thingies and there's little perfume samples in there.
Yep.
That's what it looked like. So they were able to bring that with them without suspicion. But it was not perfume. It was Novichok. CCTV caught the pair walking around town that day, and they followed the trail of Novichok. And basically, investigators were able to find that it had been sprayed on the door handle of Sergei's house.
Well,
so that was the point of contamination for the two men. The two men that had done this had disposed of the perfume bottle, basically just throwing it away somewhere, and left via the airport back to Russia, where they would later profess their innocence on a TV interview, like, oh, no, we were just there to see this like cool spire thing
on the state-controlled television. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sergei and Yulia survived with proper medical treatment, but another woman did not. On July 4th, a couple from Amesbury had found the small bottle of perfume and decided to use it.
Oh dear!
Just found the one, they had disposed of it. Yeah, Charlie Rowley and his partner Don Sturgis were ill within 15 minutes of using the perfume. Charlie was discovered by a friend in their home in a sweating, confused state, like he was rocking back and forth. Dawn later died of the exposure. After her death, an autopsy confirmed the presence of Novichok. In response to these attacks, Novichok was added to the list of controlled substances by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons in 2019. Mm-hmm. In another more recent incident, August of 2020, Alexei Navalny, a Russian opposition leader, became ill on a flight to Moscow. The plane made an emergency landing in Omsk, and Navalny was put into a medically induced coma as he was being tested and treated. Poison was suggested by his family, and it was believed to have been put into his tea before his flight, which is just a cold move. How would you do that? He was moved to a hospital in Berlin where they would conclusively discover that he had been poisoned with Novichok. Labs in France and Sweden apparently checked and concluded the same, but this was like a new kind of Novichok, not included on the list of prohibited chemicals. The Russian government was contacted by Germany with a WTF, like, hey, what is this?
You made that sound like an official form of communication between
it
governments.
Could be. It should be.
We just got a WTF from the British government.
They were literally like, you know what? I know who did this. Hey, Russia. What is this? But Navalny would later wake up from the coma, at least. So there's that.
Oh, good.
Now, there's one topic I wanted to discuss this week that I just couldn't finish because it's, we went over time with even this. But I do want to do it justice as it will be part of a transition for us. So probably next week we'll do this one. Mm-hmm. Anthrax. So some of you may remember the anthrax scare right after 9/11, when letters containing anthrax spores were sent through the mail to news offices and senators, much like the ricin scare we discussed in that episode. Anthrax is not just some chemical or even derived from plant sources, though, like many poisons we've discussed. Anthrax is a bacterial infection caused by Bacillus anthracis. So we will discuss that as well as biological warfare in general next week. So we'll be discussing some bacterial, viral type stuff used with poisonous intentions, basically.
Yes,
so
of course.
Yeah. That's what I got for you.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.